we continue our story on the Mantacor Islands laboratory where Cash and the what's it called? The investors are there. The investors would have arrived on the island same way as they did in canon, and well, everything kind of goes the same, except with Daniel Kahn not being there, as he pretty much got the kids out of there. Yes, I'm having the kids actually be away from the island this time because I really don't see them contributing to my story any further. And believe it or not, I think that them being away now and Dare saying his final goodbyes to Omega, who's living happily with two wives, a stepdaughter, and his three children, is just a good way for them to actually say goodbye on happier terms. However, this is where Cash actually reveals that yes, he did take some of Omega's DNA, and the fact that it seems to already be growing and adapting even while it's in here. Like the cells are simply regenerating despite the fact that, well, they're just simply cells. It's remarkable. And this is where Lana is like, okay, so no, I have my own island. Cyrus has the Biosyn Valley, and Mr. Gold has whatever he has. So it shouldn't be too surprising, right? And what are the others? So this is where Cash simply shows files of or videos of the Rexes. We actually see little Edie playing with her new siblings, Crunchy, Bloop, and Revan, and they're actually just having a great time. Like they're just, they're just running around, playing with each other, playing hide and seek, and Big Edie's having the time of her life because she has siblings. She's the oldest now. She doesn't have to feel like the baby of the group. And this forecast simply states, well, the children are valuable, but their father is something else here. You see, little Edie is a regular T-Rex. The children are, well, for right now, somewhat regular. They have the immortal gene, but they haven't really activated yet. They haven't died through any painful means, albeit that would be a good way to test them. And this is where Cyrus simply asks is, okay, so why haven't you done it? Why haven't you conducted a proper test, if you will? To which this is where Cyrus simply states, you're afraid of their dad, aren't you? And this is where Cass simply laughs like, no, I'm not afraid of him. You think I'm gonna look like being afraid of some overgrown lizard? Pff, yeah, sure. And this is where Mr. Gold simply states, okay, if you're not afraid of him, then let's see that Emoto gene in action. You said you have control over some of the dinosaurs, right? And apparently you don't have control of the Rexes. So if you're not afraid of them, then how about you send in that Rex killer you talked about? To which he says, that's a very, very good idea. And so this is where Cash simply taps on his iPad here, like a Discord modder, and, well, Asset 87 awakens. And this is where he has good old, Spinosaurus here start treading through a much larger door through his corridor or through his environment. And this is where we see the other Rexes. Rexy is sleeping peacefully, probably more peacefully than she's had in years. I mean, she's got her family back. Everybody's back. And she's even got, well, some new friends. Albeit she's not really too keen on sharing her mate. She can kind of get used to it for the moment at the very least here. And so this means that Big Edie also has someone that can, kind of share the burden of parenthood here. And this is where she actually walks by Rexy and just goes to get a drink of water. Everyone's living peacefully. However, Omega is doing something vastly different. While he was just sleeping, he decides to wake up. However, when he wakes up, he feels something strange. He feels more aware than he usually does, whether it's because the immortal gene allows him to adapt consistently and makes him stronger, tougher, and smarter than before. He feels himself being more intelligent, understanding that the enclosure here is fake. Well, the environment and the stuff in it is real, but everything else is fake. There's no creatures to hunt, nothing to really do, and he's aware of his family a lot more and aware of his wives as well. But this is where Asset 87 appears and simply roars at him. And he tries to go for the children. However, Omega snaps him right on the neck and throws him to the side. Cash, realizing that this isn't going to go the way it does, actually does engage in a brutal fight with Asset 87. And this is where we actually get the scene where he gets his neck broken. However, Omega doesn't drop. He actually looks at Asset 87 like, that's the best you got. What was supposed to happen? Like, my neck didn't even pop. So this is where Cyrus is like, didn't you break his neck? To which Cash is like, yeah, I'm still, I just commanded for the neck break and it didn't even do anything. How did he get stronger already? Oh man, I just shot myself in the foot with that. If these genes are already adapting, that means he's connected to them. This means that, oh my gosh, we've literally created a monster. And this is where, well, it's pretty much over at that point for Assay 87. He gets this treatment. You saw how Tank did that Ankylosaurus? Yeah, he does that by literally just shoving him off his neck, biting him down on Assay 87's neck, spinning him around, and just slamming him, just knocking him unconscious. And this is where Cash says, ugh, you'll pay for that, you big lizard. And this is where he finds a camera. Omega does, by the way. And, well, he simply looks at it and decides to actually play a little joke. He leaps at the camera, biting it, causing Cash to jump back. And this is where the others kind of see that, oh, he's not a regular T-Rex. He's smart, like dangerously smart. And so this is where Omega himself decides to explore the larger part of the facility, looking around and, well, even bursting through dino-sized corridors and stuff like that. And this is where we actually see the investors actually get their respective sales and simply state that, well, it was a pleasure doing business with you. However, you said that you were packing up and leaving. So why is that? This is where Cass simply states, well, he decides that maybe it's time to go solo. Maybe invest in himself more than his benefactor. Considering he's the brains, he's everything about this. He knows what he's doing. Besides, if he got those sales, he can get a lot more for you. And this is where he also pulls out his footage of Oral Boris 66, the Titanoboa hybrid, or enhanced with Omega cells. See, Cash had 4 of them, but he decided to give one to one of his experiments. And he decides that since the island's going to go critical in a few minutes, he decides to let Oral Boris out and programs it with the objective to kill the Rexes. However, this is where someone actually sees this programming, that being Dr. May. And so, understanding what's happening, she decides to use her communicator and actually starts loading up some of the dinosaurs onto one of the transport ports. Let's just say they're just kind of like in a different spot altogether. So that way she's able to transport the dinosaurs in one area and the investors come through another area. So this is where she starts transporting all the dinosaurs, and she actually gets to the Rexes last, actually allowing Big Edie and Little Edie to start going because Rexy and Omega do not have them. And this is where the children start following Little Edie, but this is where Cass simply, isn't having it, and he activates the self-destruct to the entire island. And this is where Oral Boris finally makes his way to the Rexes. And Omega and Rexy are just following Little Edie and Big Edie, who just simply tell them to, like, come on, let's go. And this is where Mr. Gold simply states, I wonder if he can survive such an event. If he does, he might be worth more than imagine. Perhaps my boss will invest in capturing him soon. To which Cass says there's no way he's gonna survive this island exploding. And if he does, oh crap, what if he does? You know what? Now let's just get out of here. So Omega does notice that the island's going critical, and for some reason or somehow he knows that it's going to explode. He feels the island get hotter beneath his feet, and so he tries to kind of like speed these along here. However, this is where he actually hears Rexy and Big Edie roaring at something, and he rushes for them. And this is where he actually does come face to face. And keep in mind, he can sense his own genes, his own genetics in there. And he's like, what the heck? Why does it feel like me in there? Is that me? Is that me stronger than me? I'm gonna have to kill me then. And this is where he does come face to face with Oral Boris. And wasting no time, he actually does ram right into Oral Boris, tackling him away from his family and simply instructing them to get on the boat. This is where Oral Boris does like tail slap him, and this causes him to like tumble back. However, he gets up, charges forward, and then does a leaping bite attack. However, something's different about his bite. You know, Omega does have a little bit of electricity, right? So he's able to kind of like start producing that now. He doesn't notice it quite yet, but he does notice that his bite feels a lot more lethal than before. And so this is where he actually tosses him to the side as Rexy, looking back, realizes that she has to get her children out of there. And Omega simply tells her he'll be fine, or at least in his own T-Rex way, he'll be fine. Go. Get our children to safety. And this is where Rexy, with a heavy heart, simply just nudges her children along, hoping that their father will be fine. And so this is where Omega and Oral Boris simply start tearing into each other. Oral Boris is faster, slicker, but Omega is stronger, smarter. He knows how this works. He's much stronger than Oral Boris. Oral Boris hasn't had a full chance to adapt yet, and he's not going to. And this is where Omega actually starts targeting its head. Now you might say, why is he doing that? Because he figures if he can crush it and ultimately kill it, like considering the fact that, Oral Boris hasn't had the chance to really adapt at a much slower rate. He was just given the genes as a fully grown adult Titanoboa. He figures then it'll be a wrap. They don't know how his genes work. They don't know how he had to slowly process and slowly grow. So he can overload his own cells and just destroy it right then and there. So that's what Omega does. He starts targeting the head of Oral Boris, and then when he's finally able to pin him underfoot, this is where he clamps down on his head. And it's so much force. You can hear not even a crunch or a squeeze. You hear a squelch as the entire body goes limp. And Omega doesn't let this go to waste. These are his cells, only with something tastier just added on top of it. It's like extra seasoning. And so he gulps down Oral Boris. I know, pretty quick fight, right? But again, it's the first example of what could possibly happen with Omega's cells. He eats it. And he's able to eat it quickly as well. So this does mean that Omega kind of understands himself. And that's a big part of his new sentience, a big part of his new mindset as well. And keep that in mind that he's just simply growing more sentient as he, I guess you could say as he progresses as well. So this does mean that Omega himself is actually capable of learning what he is and even who he is. So this does mean Omega does have a large portion or a large form of sentience within him. So Omega, after eating him all, realizes and even is able to see the boats leaving. Realizing he really doesn't have a way out of here, he's just simply like, well, I guess it's time to see if I'm really immortal. And this is where the island finally heats up to like its critical mass, and then boom, explodes. Omega is supposedly dust, debris, even a chunk of flesh. Not even there. He's gone. Or maybe he isn't. This is where we pan to something smaller, something still functioning nevertheless. It's a core, the immortal gene itself. And yes, the explosion vaporized the entire island, but something of Omega still survived. One small little thing. His core, something that should be impossible, but it survived. And this is where it regenerates into a fully new Omega 9. Still himself, but a fully new body. And he's looking like, oh crap, I actually survived that, huh? Well, I guess I'm actually immortal after all. But he realizes he's underwater. But he also realizes he isn't drowning either. So he kind of just looks at himself and realizes that, oh, huh, this is actually pretty nice. Never been underwater before. And now, with that, he actually does rise up to the surface and actually is able to use now his much better eyesight to fully see, well, his family. They're safe, they're leaving, they're going somewhere else. However, he doesn't join them. Not yet. However, he does let out a roar, symbolizing that he is alive. He is well. And this is where we actually see Big Edie, Rexy, Little E, and the children all simply roar in response. And he's able to hear it. But he knows right now his work isn't done. He has somewhere else to be. And as he simply swims through the water, much more professionally, mind you, he understands that his children will grow up to be the strongest creatures on Earth. And with his family, they'll be the strongest in there. And he hopes he's able to see them again before it's too late, before some traumatic event even happens. And well, Omega's actually getting used to swimming at this point. Now you might say, where is he going? He's tracking down his cells. Tracks down the closest one as well. And he's swimming. He does see a couple things. Whales, dolphins. Some orcas try to harass him, but he just like snaps his jaws at them and they just kind of like go away. However, this is where we pan over to Idris Island. Let me know if you guys understand where this island is from as well. This is some elite ball knowledge right here. And this is where we see someone arrive via helicopter. The owner, Lana. She's got her Omega cells and all her scientists are working. You see, her genetic enhancements of dinosaurs is something Vic Hoskins always wanted. Dinosaurs as weapons. Military monsters. And well, yeah, she was the one who he should have invested in, as she already has some of her prize subjects. And she asks how they're doing, to which this word with the scientist simply leads her through. Ah, yes, we do have the black T-Rex over here. The jet black Tyrannosaurus, we should say. Still strong, still durable, able to withstand tank fire as well, and even beat the Carnotaurus, who was actually able to withstand a cluster of a minefield explosion with no forms of damage. To which she's like, okay. We're getting somewhere, we're getting somewhere. But now I must ask, how is my prize subject? And this is where we pan over to the scientist showing her footage of her colossal Giganotosaurus. Colossal is the definition. The biggest and strongest creature that may have ever existed at this point. And well, we don't end off here. No. You see, we go to Omega 9, who's actually approaching the borders of Idris Island. He swam quite a few miles at this point. And this is where we actually see him coming face to face with something. As the island alarm goes off, we see a Mosasaurus actually appear. Not the standard one. No. This one is red, black, and surrounded with ammonites that actively serve it. And well, Omega simply lets out a roar and then swims to fight his latest opponent. And that's where we're going to leave it off here, you guys. What is Omega doing with all this sentience? Is he becoming something more? But that's going to be off today, you guys. And I'll see you guys for the next part.